Hey guys, and welcome to my March wrap up. So for the month of March, while I didn't get to all of the books that I wanted to as normal, I was able to finish 10 books and I'm excited to share them with you guys. Half of them, about half of them I have physical copies of. The other half are books that I was able to check out from my library. So I really like that balance. I feel like half of my books come from my physical shelves and the other half are like new releases that I'm getting from my library. So I'm really getting to backlist and new releases every month, and all around it makes for a very enjoyable reading experience. So let's go ahead and get into what I read in the month of March. The first book I want to talk to you guys about is The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honoré Fanon Jeffers. I received this advanced copy back in like May or June of last year, and I wish I had gotten to it sooner, but you know, I got to it now, better late than never, and I really enjoyed this book so much. I gave it 5 stars. I actually teared up at a couple of points in this book, and that has not happened in a long time for me, at least with books. Like with movies and shows, I tear up all the time, but with books, it just is something that doesn't happen very often. It's very rare. I can't remember if I said, but yeah, I gave this book 5 stars. I highly recommend. This book is quite lengthy. It's about 800 pages, and it's not one that I really wanted to rush through. I really took my time with it, and I really enjoyed just so many layers to this book. There are so many different characters and different storylines that are weaved throughout. It's just truly a masterpiece of a book. I don't know how else to describe it other than that. This book is recommended for people who liked Homegoing, Sing Unburied Sing, or The Water Dancer. I have read all 3 of those actually, and I enjoyed all of them, so it makes perfect sense that I did enjoy this one. I have definitely discovered over myself the past few years that like epic multi-generational family stories are just something that I'm really into, and I really do enjoy when they're done well. We're really following the lineage of this one family who they are Black, white, and indigenous, following this one family's story from being Native people in the Americas and coming to the United States from Africa. We really see so much history throughout different points at the same time as seeing just what's going on with their family. One of the main characters we're following, Ailey. She is one of the storylines that is really central throughout the book itself, and she is a very interesting character as well. I really enjoyed reading her perspectives, and this book is just so layered. I cannot highly recommend it to you guys enough. I am so glad that I finally got to this book, and I will be reading whatever this author puts out next. Next, we have a nonfiction book, and that is Jane Austen at Home, a biography by Lucy Worsley. I gave this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book. I listened to most of it on the audiobook from my library, and like the title says, this is a biography about Jane Austen, and I have not read any biographies about her before, so it was definitely interesting to get to know some more of her background, because I haven't read all of her novels. I still have some of her short stories and stuff like that to read, but I have read all of the main novels that she's known for. The way that this biography of her is told is kind of through the different places that she's made home throughout the years, and it was definitely interesting to just see how it was for a woman and how reliant you were on basically your family providing for you materially, because there were just not really much options out there for women at this time, and especially it was just looked down upon if you were in a certain part of society to be someone who was working and to be a woman and making money of your own. It also was interesting to get a look into her love life, and even though she was a spinster, to see the different situations that she was in over the years, and that she did have opportunities probably to be married, and she chose to be on her own, which was something that was very interesting to see, and that I feel like I could definitely relate to at this point in my life. And just seeing how she was pursuing what she wanted for herself, which was her writing, it just makes me more interested in going back in and rereading her novels, because I read them so long ago, and I kind of read them really close together, so a lot of the different storylines kind of blurred together for the different books for me. So I definitely I am going to eventually reread all of her novels. I also have another biography on my shelves the one that is written from, I believe it was her nephew, and that one is mentioned in here. And I really liked how she addressed that biography, and about how after Jane Austen passed away, her family was very like they were very into her image and how she came across. And you know, your family only wants to put you out there in the best light, so it's a little bit more of a biased biography of her because it was written by someone who was in the family. If you are someone who likes Jane Austen as an author, I would definitely recommend this biography. I would possibly be interested in reading another one about her in the future, so if you guys had any other recommendations for nonfiction surrounding Jane Austen, then definitely let me know. All in all, I just want to say I had a really good reading month for the month of March, and the next one was a good book too. So this one was a new release and I don't have it physically, so I'll show you guys it here. It's called Yonder by Jabari Asim. In this book, we're following a cast of a few different slaves who are all on this plantation. It's called Placid Hall, and it's owned by Cannonball Green and his wife, who is known as Screech Owl. We are following, I believe it was like 3 or 4 different perspectives, maybe a little bit more. Each chapter we're kind of like following a different person. And what I found very interesting about this book was that it didn't refer to the slaves as the title of slaves, but calls them stolen ones, which honestly makes very sense. And I thought that was definitely different, and I appreciated that aspect. We follow the different relationships that they have with one another, as far as friendships and trying to look out for each other, and relationships like love relationships, and how that's affected by the fact that they can be sold at any time, and just how their owners kind of like manipulate their relationships to their own benefit, as in like giving them kids, which will make more slaves. The love that they have and that they're still able to develop for each other, even though they're living in such cruel circumstances, was something that was very beautiful to see and heartbreaking at the same time. There is this traveling minister who comes to their plantation and is starting to open them up to the ideas of freedom and independence, and they're going to have to choose whether that's something that they're going to take the risk of trying to get freedom for themselves or not. And like I mentioned before, the slaves, they were called stolen in the book, and in the book the plantation or like slave owners, they were called thieves. All in all, I can't remember if I said I gave this book 4 stars. I feel like this is a solid book, and I feel like though I have read a lot of different slave narratives, and this one, it was very good, but it just didn't reach a 5-star level for me. But even though it didn't, it was still a book that I feel like is very important and hard-hitting, and one that I would recommend. Next, we have another new release, and that one is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. This is one that I had on my anticipated book releases for this year, and while I had it on that list, I also realized at the same time that the likelihood that it was actually going to live up to being a highly rated mystery thriller was a little bit low, and I kind of what I figured was going to happen happened, and I gave it 3 stars. I listened to this on audiobook and I thought it was okay, not terrible, but it didn't really like do anything that wowed me or surprised me in this book. I really enjoyed the setting though, and I really felt like at times, especially like when the novel first started off, it just had really good vibes and atmosphere that I look for in my mystery novels. We're following the story of this woman. Her name's Jess, and she is going to go stay with her brother Ben because something has happened where she's at, and so we know she's like on the run. We don't know what happened. And when she gets to the apartment, he's not there. The neighbors are all very weird. It seems like they all knew Ben, but she doesn't really know how they're all connected. And it really just seems like everybody's kind of a little bit off and standoffish and weird, and she doesn't know what's going on with that. And she can't figure out what's going on with her brother because he's not answering his phone or anything, and she can't contact him. We also follow quite a few perspectives in this novel, and I feel like that's one of the things that kind of kept this from being as enjoyable, because we are following so many different people and so many different people who are mostly unlikable, and I just felt like it could have benefited from having fewer characters, but for them to be a little bit stronger than to have as many as we did have. Some of the there's a few different twists and turns that take place throughout the novel. A couple of them I did see coming, a couple of them I didn't see coming, so that was always nice. And at the end, the end wasn't exactly what I had predicted from the beginning, so that was good too. I did also read the guest list from Lucy Foley a while ago, and I think I also felt the same with about 3-star ratings, so I'm not really sure if I'm going to continue to pick up more books from her just because I overall have been a little bit underwhelmed by the ones that I have read. Next we have a new release that I do own the physical copy of, and that is Nobody's Magic by Destiny O. Birdsong. I had always planned on picking up this book when it came out, and I had even more incentive to when I was asked to do a podcast episode with Book Solid for this that we actually recorded a couple weeks ago, and I believe should be coming out sometime in May. This book says it's a novel, but in my opinion it's more of a set of novellas. So we're following 3 different women. They're all from Shreveport, Louisiana, and they all have albinism, and as these Black women are going through their lives, it's definitely affected different things just like growing up and how they are. The stories themselves, they don't, even though they all take place in the same city, they do not really interconnect at all. So that's why I feel like this is more of like a short story collection or a collection of novellas more so than a novel. It's very interesting how the author has looked at these different themes but through a few different perspectives of characters. So the first one was Suzette, who she's in her 20s but she reads kind of a bit younger because she's very sheltered. She had a very bad experience growing up as a kid that turned her father into being super overprotective to the point of being very manipulating and controlling with her mom and with her. So she's very sheltered, and we're following her as she's just starting to finally like take control of her own future and what she wants for herself. Then we follow Maple, who her mom has recently passed. Her mom was recently killed, and she is having to deal with grief. And then we follow Agnes, who in my opinion was the one that I liked the least, and she's working at this job trying to get some money, and she meets this other guy there. They of course, my memory card just ran out of data, so I had to go and make some room. So what I was talking about before was about how I didn't really care for as much about the last character. Her name was Agnes. She kind of has this low, like, generic off-brand Bonnie and Clyde moment with the guy that she ends up connecting to, which is a security guard, the guy at the place that she works at. I'm not going to like really give away too much of what's going on in the story or like spoilers or anything, but overall I gave this book 4 stars. I would definitely be open to reading anything else that that Destiny O. Birdsong comes out with. I know I gave this book 4 stars, but that's probably like rounding it up a little bit. I would say more around like 3.5, 3.75, just because while I found all of it interesting, I didn't particularly enjoy the last story as much. Just some of it was just a little bit too much for me. There was one point during last month where I had like 4 or 5 different books going at the same time, and nothing was particularly like calling out to me, and so I kind of wanted to make sure I didn't get into a reading slump, so I decided to pick up something that would be just like super quick and easy to consume and wouldn't take a lot of brain power, especially because I just had a lot of other stuff going on last month too, and so I decided to pick up 2 young adult novels, and they're both written by the same author, Laura Wood, and that was Snowfall of Silver and Under a Dancing Star. These books will probably always live in my mind as being very interrelated because, to be honest, okay, I really enjoyed them. I gave each 4 stars for what they are. They are young adult novels. I know I'm not in that age range anymore, but I was still able to enjoy them and enjoy kind of the predictability of them. And I feel like this author, she has kind of a formula that she uses to write her books where we're following the same type of character in both of these novels. I have another one from her that I've read before, but it's been so long I don't remember everything exactly, but I feel like it kind of, I probably could include it in what I'm saying right now as well, in that she has a character who, she definitely has a time period she likes to write in. So these both take place in the 30s, and the main characters, like I said, are very similar types, and like situations they're having to go through are kind of similar. We're both following a young woman who is kind of going away from home for the first time. So let's talk about Snowfall of Silver first. We are following Freya. She's 18 years old and she lives in Cornwall. She runs away from home and she wants to have like a super dramatic big adventure because she wants to become an actress, and I really enjoyed her story, but I feel like at the same time a lot of stuff was so like coincidental and just her happening to be in the right place at the right time and a little bit too convenient to keep her plot going or her story going. But at the same time, like, it was very comforting, like the writing style. I don't know how to explain it, but I just really enjoyed it, and it didn't really take too much brain power to get through this book, and so I really enjoyed the writing too. The author is kind of into more descriptive writing, and I enjoyed that. Then we have Under a Dancing Star, who in this one takes place in 1930s England as well. We're following Bois. She lives with her parents on this estate, and they want her to marry someone because like it'll help them because they're kind of broke, but they see her as being this girl who just needs some more training and whatever, that she embarrasses them. So they send her off to Italy to go spend some time with her uncle and his fiance, I believe it was, because they believe that that will help to tame her and make her into a proper lady. But when she gets there, she sees that actually her uncle's fiance is actually a little bit more like bohemian and not probably what they were looking for, and she gets introduced to all these different artist types, and she herself is really into science and wants to go to school and pursue that, but her parents are wanting her to more so get married and settle down. And so, like I said, these both have kind of very similar themes with following a young woman who is basically trying to make a life for herself, maybe not exactly what the parents and family had in mind for them. I really love her writing and everything, and I would definitely recommend these books. I feel like they were a joy to read. They didn't really take too long. I believe each of these took me like maybe a day to read, so they were pretty quick to get through. Next, we have another new release, and that is Disorientation by Elaine Sue Chow. This book I gave 4 stars, and I will say there was a point in the beginning, so I actually listened to this on audiobook. There was a point in the beginning where I was like, I'm not sure how I'm feeling about this book. I think I'm just not super into books where they're in academic settings, but I mean, it was very easy to listen to and I could follow along, so I was like, you know, I'm just gonna keep reading or listening and see where this goes. And I'm really glad that I didn't DNF it, because I did end up enjoying it a lot more than I thought that I was going to. What we're following in this book is a young woman. She is 29 years old and she's a PhD student. She's a Taiwanese American woman, and she is going to school on this college campus. She's trying to, well, she's pretty desperate to finish her dissertation. Yeah, her dissertation. She's doing it on the late canonical poet Xiao Chao, and it's not exactly something that she's wanting to do, but she feels like if she does that, she's kind of being more so pressured into it from her, I forget what's called now, like her mentor, because it's something that will set her up for a decent career in her academic field. As she's doing some research in the archives about this poet who is like this very widely known and celebrated poet, she finds a note in the archives. What ends up following eventually becomes this full-scale big thing. I'm not going to give any spoilers or whatever. This book definitely touches on a lot of themes of Asian fetishization, stuff like yellow facing, and so much that I feel like there was a lot of topics really brought up and explored throughout here. Seeing her relationship with her white boyfriend was definitely interesting. Her relationship with Vivian, who was her rival in the school, as well as her friend Eunice. I just really enjoyed my time with this book, even though, yeah, towards the end it kind of got a little bit over the top, but I didn't really mind so much because it's kind of what helped me to keep my interest and see like where is this even going, and the repercussions from the decisions she makes and how big they are was definitely interesting. And I really just enjoyed this book. I feel like this is one that is going to stick with me over time, and I really love that. The next one I want to talk to you guys about is a nonfiction book, and that one is The Dark Queens, The Bloody Rivalry That Forged the Medieval World by Shelley Puhat. I gave this book 4 stars, and this book was so interesting. So we're following the story of these 2 women in the early Middle Ages, and they were basically ruling in a time where this was definitely not the norm. They're following the story of these 2 queens, Brunhild and Fredegund. It was definitely interesting learning about the, I'm going to butcher this, the Merovingian Empire, but it does make me interested in wanting to continue to learn more about medieval times and stuff, because I just find that stuff so interesting and how things were back then. This was in the early Middle Ages, so this was the early 6th century, so I think around the years like 500-ish. Reading about their lives and stuff, it was like watching a show or something like Game of Thrones. Like I know they said Cersei from Game of Thrones, was inspired like her as a character, I was inspired from them, and I could definitely see that for sure. The things they would do and to fight against each other and backstab, it was just like so, it read like a novel, not actually like nonfiction. Obviously we don't know, maybe not everything was the most accurate, just because there's not a lot of records left from that time. There were some people who did chronicle the things that were going on around those times, so we get to see at least some of what was going on then. I gave this one 4 stars. I think one of the things that kind of kept it from reaching the 5-star rating for me was that some of the writing in some parts read a little bit textbooky, a little bit dry, and especially when there's like a lot of info dumping. And so maybe if I had a little bit more of a background around with the history around these times, I wouldn't have gotten lost during some of the points, just because there's a lot of people, a lot of names, a lot of different lands, and a lot of people to remember in general, and a lot of players, and this political games that were going on about who was going to be ruling these kingdoms and stuff. But all in all, I really enjoyed this, and I want to purchase a physical copy of it, because this is definitely a book that I want to have on my shelves, and I feel like I would definitely enjoy rereading again in the future. Then last and least, actually, was, unfortunately, I did have a book that I did not really enjoy so much last month, and that was Dear Miss Metropolitan by Carolyn Farrell, which really bummed me out because this is a beautiful cover and the premise sounded so interesting. But all in all, I actually ended up only giving this book 2 stars. Looking at the Goodreads ratings, it doesn't seem like it's getting too high ratings either. The average rating on Goodreads right now was a 3.2. I've heard this book being compared to Room by Emma Donoghue, I think was the author's name, and I definitely can see the similarities, and I feel like that's also why I didn't like this book too, because I wasn't really crazy about Room. I liked the movie much better, which is very rare for book to movie adaptations, and I kind of feel like if they were to make this book into a movie, I would enjoy watching it on screen more so than reading it. So what we're basically following is these 3 different girls who were all kidnapped by this man for decades in a neighborhood, and eventually 2 of the 3 of them are found. We know that horrific things happened to them while they were kidnapped, and I liked that the violence and things that were done to them weren't really glorified. We don't even go into things in very much depth, but the author does let you know they went through some really bad stuff while they were there. But we're following them in the time before, like what their lives were before, leading up to the circumstances of them being taken, and then how they are continuing on with their lives later after they have been rescued. We also get some perspectives from other people randomly, like people who were involved with the case, and a woman, specifically the Miss Metropolitan was like a newspaper woman that lived on that street, and a lot of the people just feel like, how could they not have known that this horrible stuff was going on in this house on their street? I think so all of that, how I'm describing it, it sounds like a very interesting premise, like a really interesting book, and something that I thought would rate highly in my reading experience. But I think it was just the way that the author chose to tell the story I just didn't really gel so much with. It is a little bit, not exactly experimental, but the format of the book itself isn't exactly the norm, and I don't know exactly how to explain this. There were a lot of times where I found myself just being confused on whose perspective we were following, or what point in the timeline, or what anything had to do with anything. Like, there's random pictures that are included throughout the book, and a lot of the times I just was really confused and not sure what they were supposed to really bring to the story or how they related. I'm sure maybe if I thought about it more, I could have figured it out, but I don't know. The formatting, the chapters are very short, they're easy to get through, but I don't know, all in all, I just was super underwhelmed. I considered DNFing it a few different times, but I just wanted to finish it for myself, because I wanted to, like, have given the book its full chance and see in the end like how things went. But I just overall didn't really enjoy my time reading this book, which is sad to say, and it's not one I would recommend. Maybe other people will like this, but for me, this one was just a big miss. Now, on a more positive note, those are all the 10 books that I was able to complete in the month of March. I am really glad that I got to get to actually a really good amount of books, and some that were actually pretty chunky as well. There's a few other books that I started in the month of March that I wasn't able to finish. I had like 50 to 100 pages left. I randomly picked up The Knight of the Seven Kingdoms by George R.R. Martin. Let me see if I actually have that one right over here. And I was able to get through like half of it, so I ended up finishing the next half in April, which will be included in my April wrap-up, as well as Worn, A People's History of Clothing by Sophie Thanhauser. I ended up finishing the last bit of it in the month of April, so I'll just go ahead and talk about that in my April wrap-up as well. I'd be very interested to know how your guys' reading went for the month of March. We can go ahead and talk about it down below. That's it for today. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!